Hello and welcome to this video where we're going to give a good demo over the Pennsylvania Certification Board certification for the Certified Community Health Worker. So what you're going to do is you have your general Google open. You can really just go ahead and start and type in the PCB certification. And once you click there, it should be the first one to come up. So go ahead and then click on the Pennsylvania Certification Board, or again, you can go to that pacertboard.org, whatever is easiest. So this is a certification board primary site. So you can see that there's a lot of different things on this website. But one of the things that we're going to kind of go through is over here on certifications. You're going to click down at Certified Community Health Worker. So go ahead and click that. This is a page where it talks all about community health workers and what we do and what it is all about. The main text here talks about the requirements to be a certified community health worker. It kind of gives you a brief overview. On the sidebar here, the training programs, these are all the training programs that offer the accredited program. So any of these programs that you take are eligible for the certification. As you see here, PA Area Health Education Center, PA AHEC, this is the program that you went through. But none of that really necessarily matters for you right now. And then up here is where you really want to concentrate your knowledge and efforts. So the first thing we're going to go through the download the application here, but I do want to take a note that you can now apply online. When you do so, you do have to log in or create a new website. Obviously, you're just going to click here and then go ahead and create your own website. This is becoming a little bit more automatic for the PCB board to do your application. But in order to go over your application or to kind of have all that information, go ahead and hit that download button. So one of the things to know with this application, it is typable, but you do want to make sure that you download it and save it to your desktop before you type in it, or that information will not save. So as you start to go through this, jot down any questions so you can email and ask along the way. I'll try to answer all the questions that have been asked before in the past. So this is the cover page of your application. So it talks about all the ways that you can submit the application. They do, other than the online component, they do ask that email is probably the best way. And you do have to make sure that this is in a PDF format, and the photos of the application are not accepted. So it has to be in a PDF. So if it's in a Word document or photos, you do have to convert that to that PDF. So you do want to email it to the pacertboard.org, and you want to make sure you have all the information ready for that. It does take about 10 days for them to review and process that. If you do not have information back in 10 days, you can go ahead and email them. They said that's okay. So that way you can kind of get an idea of what's going on. They will email you, but they will also mail you a hard copy of your certificate within those 10 business days. So again, the first couple pages are just about the application. So again, what is the role of a community health worker? So again, what are you doing? What are your job responsibilities? When you look at the education requirements, it's actually, there's two things that can acquire. Again, we're doing the 75 hours of education through the CHW training program. So you have to do this application within 5 years of getting that training. So that is something that is important to take note. So you do have 5 years from taking the training for you to be able to apply for certification. You also have to have 1 year of full-time experience, so 1 calendar year of employment or volunteer, or 2,000 hours of paid or volunteer employment as a community health worker. And again, when we think about work experience, if you haven't worked at your current position for 1 year, it could be anything in the last 5 years relating back to community health workers. So that's why this first part, role of a community health worker, is so important because any job duties or work responsibilities done that you've done as a community health worker or that may fall underneath the umbrella of a community health worker will count towards those 2,000 hours if you're piecing them from across 5 years. They are also going to require job descriptions. So job descriptions of all the organizations that you are collecting your hours from. If it's a current job, they do want to make sure that it is signed by both the applicant and your immediate supervisor. All these documents should be signed by a supervisor, provide dates that you've worked with that employer, the amount of hours that you've worked with that employer, as well as that being on letterhead. That is extremely important as well. And then there's 60 hours of on-the-job supervision. So we'll talk a little bit more about this later on in this application. But something to note that supervision is really dictated by your supervisor. It could be observing, it could be mentoring, coaching, evaluating, really just somewhere where you could maybe create and promote self-motivation, learning, professional development, and whatnot. There is no requirement on who can be your supervisor or who provides that supervision. Supervision can be in the one-on-one setting. It could also be observation or group. And it can be done by more than one supervisor. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And when you talk about your supervision, it does need to be you do need to have at least 1 hour in all of these domains. So I think if you break it down, it's about 8 or 9 hours in each section if you do it equally. But you may be doing more in safety and self-care. You may be having more in communication and interpersonal skills than you may in care coordination or advocacy. For this application, there is a $50 fee, so just take note of that. There is a place at the bottom for you to provide that information, or you can always check with your employer to see if they will be paying for your certification. This next part is application information. I just encourage you to read and review everything on this, but specifically with this because we're not going to really talk about it. And then we'll talk in more in depth on this application. So as you can see here starting on page 6, these are all typable word boxes, I guess, text boxes. But in order for it to save, you do need to hit this download button, save it first, and then you can type into that information. So obviously up top, first is just all of your demographic information, making sure that you understand what disciplinary action, if you have before, have you read and understand the Code of Ethics for community health workers, some content information, again, some additional demographics as you go through the rest of page 7. Here at the bottom of page 7 is about that payment. So how are you providing payment for your application fee? Is it check, Visa, card? Is it an employer who is organizing, or employer organization who's mailing on your behalf, and whatnot? So again, there is that number, the card number, security code, expiration date, name, address, and email for the receipt. Again, when you look at this formal education, if you've gone through our AHEC training, you do not need to worry about any of this, so you can have a nice big cross out of that. We are the CCHW education training. So this is that 75 hours of education through one of our training programs. You have all should or will receive a certificate of completion for the course that shows that you've completed 75 hours of the core, and that is what you need to provide a copy of. So that is all they need, is that course completion with your name, the date you completed it, the instructor's signature, and showing that you spent 75 hours doing the core curriculum. And then if you do have college transcripts, you can check yes. But again, if you've done the 75 hours, you don't need any additional hours to prove to them that you've completed the education component. And then step 2 is looking at your experience and job descriptions. So again, you do need to have 1 year of full-time employment, so 1 calendar year. 1 calendar year is about 1,900 hours if you do the math, or about 2,000 hours of that part-time or volunteer paid work. Again, all of the employment does need to fall underneath the realm of what a community health worker does. So it has to fall underneath that umbrella. Within that job description, you also need a job description from the organization that is signed off by the immediate supervisors. So you also have to, again, type in where you're currently working, city, zip, all that fun stuff, about how many hours you work per week and total hours. So if you're only doing one position, this is the only thing that you have to do. Oh, I worked at the Wright Center in Scranton. This is my zip. I was a community health worker. I started, September 7th of 2022, and now it's September 7th of 2023. I worked about 40 hours and for this 1 year, so I made about whatever those hours up to be. Along with that, I will need an additional piece of paper or piece of letterhead that talks about my specific duties and the dates that I am employed that is signed off by my supervisor. So then you can hit that check mark yes. If you worked more jobs, again, there's spots for 2 other jobs. Again, to continue on writing that information down about how many hours a week and how many hours in this position, again, for same 2. And again, with both of this previous employment, you do need to have that letter on company head verifying the title, duties, and dates, and whatnot, signed off by a supervisor. If you have a bad relationship with the supervisor, I suggest reaching out to HR to provide that verification letter. It is very common for HR departments to have a template already for employment verification. And again, if you have more than 3, just continuing add whatever those letterheads are and attach that with this document. And then going into the third section, the on-the-job supervision, again, you need 60 hours of on-the-job supervision. This is any hours depending on the length of employment. So again, if you have more than 2 jobs that you are submitting for, maybe you had 30 hours on one job and 30 hours of supervision in the other. So you may have to do 2 documents of this. So 2-page, 10s. So you may need to have a duplicacy of this, which I think is why the online application is a little bit easier to be able to provide that information rather than just copying this page twice. So again, you're going to put your name here and applicant name, and then the primary supervisor. So again, if you have more than one supervisor, you can certainly have more than one fill this page out. But if there's somebody who did the majority of your supervision hours, I suggest putting their information down and then the numbers of hours here. And then again, the supervisor does have to sign off on this. Now, some of the questions that have come up are who fills out this section. Your supervisor might be the one wanting to fill it out and then they just sign off, or they fill it out to the T and then they sign it and give it to you. There may be some supervisors who want you to fill it out and they'll just sign and date as needed. From there, it's the acknowledgement and release. So again, go ahead and make sure you read through the release, read and initial each of these boxes here, that you've read and you agree and you understand what you're signing off for. Again, printing, signing, and dating. And the last thing is making sure you do have this notarized. So don't do this page until you're in front of somebody at a notary. A notary, you can just Google, I believe FedEx's and UPS's have notaries, as well as banks. So if you have a specific bank that you work with, you can always reach out to them to see if there's a notary on their staff. So you can kind of go ahead and do that. And then they'll provide a seal. And then finally, there's this checklist. So again, your name and then just simply putting a check mark that everything has been done. And it talks about exactly what is needed from each, and then you sign and date. Now, some of the other additional questions are, how do I get this notary in the online application? So my assumption is that you should still print and download everything here, so that way you have this copy, this version of it, and then when you go to do the online application, you have those pieces of documentation already ready to either upload or scan into your computer to put in the online application board. I've heard that the online application is very simple, but if you have any questions with any of that, please go ahead and reach out. We can walk through this one-on-one together. But if you have any questions or if you need anything, please let me know.